Hello everyone, this is another Pioneer CT-F950, and if you are used to watching my videos, you know that I like to start the videos with the cover off and the face plate off on these units, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is I like to take you through the work that was done to this unit. I don't typically do before and after pictures because they're largely cosmetic. In this situation, I'll explain what I had to do and the changes that or the work that I had to do to refurbish this. And I usually start from this point because this is the most telling position where you'll be able to see the major components, and then we'll look inside. I'll go off tripod and look inside and talk about some of the work that was done there. So to begin with, you'll probably notice that all the controls are shiny and look new, and that's because these have been polished. The panel here, this is the lens cover, has been taken apart and cleaned. The LEDs, as you can see, work without any issue. And you'll see you've got a nice bright display. This unit has had its power supply recapped, and I also recapped the control board, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Some of the other work that was done on this unit included resurfacing the two pinch rollers. I bought some aftermarket pinch rollers that I tried, and you can see another video on my site where I show how they are terribly out of round and created a really poor sound. A lot of flutter was produced. These I rubber renewed and cleaned up very nicely. They're nice pinch rollers. Sometimes they can't be restored, and I have to replace them with turned rollers, which I'll usually get from a guy who I use. His name is Terry's Rollers, and he turns them. But when he does that and turns them back around to me, they're $50 each. These could be cleaned up very nicely, and I didn't have to do that here. The unit, for the most part, of course, as you know, I have to replace all the belts and the idler tire, and I have to strengthen the idler tire spring that this is on. But I also had to replace this take-up reel because the other one was broken. When I do the pinch rollers, of course, what I have to do is pull this pinch roller out, which means I have to replace this. It's a nut, and I add a washer to it, and this is the left height adjustment. This adjusts the tape path because there's a little guide here. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll go off tripod and I'll show you some of the things that I ended up working on inside, and I'll explain some of that to you. Now, some of the things that I always do these days is I always rebuild the take-up motor. The take-up motor always needs to be rebuilt, or is in such a situation that if it isn't rebuilt, it could stop working, and I don't want to sell a unit where that happens. Down here, you'll see you've got the main belt, and you'll see a feed roller belt as well. You'll see the static spring, and if we go over to the control board, you'll notice that the control board's been recapped with premium capacitors. You'll also see that the power supply has been recapped, and these are all premium capacitors that I use when I recap. The motherboard, however, I did not recap, and quite frankly didn't see any need to recap. This unit sounds like it's brand new. What I did do was, as is typical, I always take this apart. This is the Dolby, and I clean and then I DeoxIT the inside of that. This is for the mic. I usually just DeoxIT from the outside. And these are for your source versus tape, and usually because it's harder to take these apart, I just go ahead and DeoxIT from the outside. You will notice that all of the potentiometers have been marked, and they are marked as they came to me. And quite frankly, I didn't really need to adjust any of them. They were in very good shape. That is, they did not, I didn't have a left-right unbalanced situation where I had to change anything. Same goes for these. Although I don't mark them, I did not have to change the meter adjustments. Okay, so we went over the mechanism changes that need to be made. Also, I don't know if you wouldn't be able to tell, there are some capstan behind capstan. They call them screws. It's part 58. It's right behind the capstan. These sometimes break, and these were both broken. I repaired those. So that takes you on a tour of the inside. Now I'm going to show you something that is going to take a while for me to work on before I'm able to put this up for sale, and I'll explain it in a minute. Now, this unit came with a beautiful bonnet. This is the simulated wood grain top. They call it a bonnet. And this thing is in, I have to say, it's very, very close to new condition. I don't see any scratches across the top that are really, they're light scratches, but there's nothing really wrong with it. Normally the corners are all banged up on these, and this is in really good shape. I haven't even cleaned this yet. But you'll notice there's something missing from the back. Well, it's not exactly missing. I'll show it to you in just a moment. It needs some work. So the part in question is the heat grate. This is actually a metal piece that's painted, and you'll see I've done some sanding on it. I'm not sure how well the camera may pick this up, but there are some sort of spider cracks in the paint, and what that is there's rust developing underneath. So what I will be doing is stripping the paint off of this. I think, and actually if you look at that right there in the sheen of the light, see a little, looks like a scratch? Well, it's not. It's a, I don't know if I can zoom in on it, if it'll stay in focus, but that is rust developing below the paint. And in order for me to do something about that, I have to strip all of the paint off of this and repaint it. And I'll repaint it with a glossy black, and then that goes onto the bonnet. And I'll do that before I put this up for sale. If I have this set to source, it will play whatever the source music is that's coming through. This is generally used so that you can adjust the input volume. When it's placed on tape, you'll notice you don't hear anything. You will when we start recording, because when the monitor is on tape, the 3-head deck is now using the playback head that plays back what has just been recorded on the record head. So if we look at this, we would see a record head and a playback head sort of sandwiched together in one assembly. And that's so that you can record and immediately hear what you're getting on the tape. That's effective to make sure that you don't have any issues on the tape. So now we'll go ahead and play a selection and record it. We'll set the repeat to counter. We'll set the counter to 0. And what that means is that when I go to rewind, it will actually stop at 0 and start playing again. So let's go ahead and get this going. Now you're hearing what's actually recorded on the tape as it's recording. If I go back to source, you can tell a little difference in the treble. Now let's see how the bias adjusts. All the way to the right, dulls a little. Back to the middle. And all the way to the left, doesn't sound really good. Back to the middle. Now let's listen to it. This is where I was playing with the bias. We can take the Dolby out. So that is a normal tape. Now we're going to move to, this is, by the way, a type 1 tape. Now we're going to move to a type 3 tape, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Now, type 3 tapes were actually what we called Ferrochrome tapes. They were a combination of chromium dioxide or cobalt treated and your standard tape type. So this can actually be recorded either on the FeCR setting, which we have here, or on the standard setting. It really depends on the sound that the tape produces based on the deck that you're using. Some decks may sound different than others or from others. So what we'll do is we'll do the same thing we did on the standard tape test. We'll go ahead and set it to FeCR and start a recording going to test so that we can see how it sounds. Now we might mess with the bias a little bit. We may even go back over and change to a standard tape type. Okay, so here we go. Sounds a lot better, higher bias. We get more sound on the tape. Does not sound good on the other direction. We're going to bring it back to 0. Then we're going to switch over to standard. Sounds pretty much the same. I think if we went to Chrome, that might be the best we get. Remember, this is a Ferrochrome tape, so it's a mixture of standard and Chrome. Actually sounds better on Chrome than it does on either of the others. So let's play that back and see how it sounds. Remember, bias adjustment has nothing to do with the sound when you're playing back. I had adjusted this. This is when I went to the other side. And I'm about to switch it to standard. So what we heard was sort of a combination. We found that this ferrochrome tape, remember it's ferric plus chrome, sounded best when it was recorded on the chrome setting, and I think we had bias all the way to the left, and we got a pretty good sounding tape out of it. So that sort of helps you understand why it's a little different to play with. Now remember, these tapes stopped being, they ceased production in 1985. Sony was the last to make them. So if you get them or you have FeCR tapes, you can certainly record them on this deck. You may have to work with the bias to see how the tapes that you have actually sound. Now something's interesting about this kind of tape is that it is identical from a cassette tape case standpoint to the normal, right? So if you'll notice, you just have the read-write notches, just like the normal tapes had the read-write notches. Now we're going to compare to what we call the Chromium Dioxide or the Type 2 tapes, and they are significantly different. Now, a Type 2 tape differs at least in one physical way, and that is that there's an additional notch here for tape recorders that could actually sense. They had a sensor up here. In addition to the read-write, it was designed to set automatically your tape bias for recording to CrO2, chromium dioxide, or what we called later cobalt-treated tapes. That's what this is. It's not actually chromium dioxide tape. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and do a test. We're going to leave it set to CrO2, chromium dioxide. I'm going to leave the input at the moment. I might not need to change that. Same selection that we've been testing and listening to. And then I'll work on the bias back and forth a little bit, see how it does. Gets a little duller, a little brighter, almost tinny. Now let's listen to that. That was a test tone prior to this. That's where I was messing with the bias. So that gives you a demonstration of a chromium dioxide or cobalt treated tape, and you can tell right away you have a very nice high definition. Notice I had left the Dolby in, and on playback had it in. Very clear highs, a really nice good deep bass as well. So overall, the best tape we've listened to so far is the chromium dioxide tape. Now let's give the metal tape a try. So it was in late 1970s, early 1980s that the breakthrough of metal alloy tapes occurred, and the metal alloy tape allows a much higher signal to be recorded onto the tape. Of course, it also requires more power goes to the erase head, and not only do you put more power into the erase head to erase the tape, but you also want to align the metal particles and put a bias on so that when the recording actually is created by the record head, it's recording against a clean, very clean tape. So what we're going to do here is we're going to listen to, we're actually going to record and then listen to a selection. Same selection we have been playing, recording and listening to, so that you can see how it sounds. So we're going to get that started now. Make sure that we're at 0. We're going to start over. We have our metal selection. I've left the input volume where it was, and we'll adjust as we need to. So here we go. We'll adjust the bias. Really brightens. Really dulls to the other direction. So we're going to let it be a little bright at +3. Now let's see how that sounds. This is where I turned the bias all the way down to -5. Didn't sound so good. Now that sounds pretty good. Now something that you'll learn if you do research on metal tapes is the signal to noise ratio is much higher on a metal tape. The level of tape hiss, which is produced by the magnetic particles passing by the head, across the head, is reduced to the point that you could probably, instead of using Dolby, you could probably get away without using Dolby, and that's what we're going to do in the next test. We're not going to use Dolby. We are going to turn Dolby off, and I'm actually going to bring the recording volume up just a tad. I think I'll leave the bias at 0, and we'll start this and see how it sounds. So let's get this queued up and ready to go. And here we go. Now, one of the other things that you get with metal tapes is you can record them at a higher volume, which is exactly what I've done. So let's hear how it sounds. No Dolby. Notice I brought this volume up. Sounds pretty good. I think this is one of the best sounding decks that I have had in a long time. I hope you have enjoyed this demonstration. It may have gone a little longer than is typical, but this particular deck deserves it. I will also be posting to, well, actually I'll add it to this video once I have the bonnet complete with the grate that has to be repainted. That'll happen in a month or so, although you won't know it because it's all going to be shoved together in one video. Again, thanks for watching. Take care. Okay, I'm going off tripod because what I want to do is talk about one of those rare finds that you get on eBay. This is a Pioneer CT-F950. Now, the other videos that you've seen that I've put before this one really detail the inside workings, everything that I ended up doing to this unit. But I wanted you to see how pristine the cabinet is and how I'd changed the grill. Now, I have pictures of the back grill. That's this grill back here. That was showing signs of rust. You could see those spider cracks. Now, after I have refinished that, it looks like it's brand new. Now, these did have a glossy coat of paint on them originally, so there's nothing new there. But you can see, as I am panning around, you can see that the case top, which we call the bonnet, well, Pioneer called the bonnet, is in exceptional condition. Notice there are no dings in it at any point on the edge. At the very end, these are almost always dinged up. There's usually a dent or something that I have to repair. Nothing on this. Now, from a faceplate standpoint, right there is a small ding in the faceplate. I want to make sure that folks who go to buy this realize it isn't like it was purchased yesterday. These blemishes, I think somebody tried to clean it with something caustic. I cannot get those out. I did polish to the point that I was afraid I was going to get down to the actual plastic. So that is a blemish. I can't do anything about it. But if we travel across and we look, I mean, this is almost a pristine case. Now, if you look across the side of it with the shiny, yes, I did polish it. There are some minor scratches. I'm not sure if this camera is going to pick them up. There are some minor scratches in it, but they are minor scratches. And if you look at the side looks fantastic. Now I'm going to turn the unit around. All of the cases have been marked with the serial number of the unit that it comes with. And I've done that not because I've had trouble, but others have talked about folks buying these and swapping out the case and sending back the unit. However, if you buy this unit and there are any problems with it, I expect you to contact me immediately. This should work exceptionally out of the box as soon as you get it, as if it were brand new. Can I guarantee that in 6 months or a year you're not going to have a problem with it? Of course not. This is something that's over 40 years old. And even though I have done a lot of work on it, I've recapped the power board and the control board, something could go wrong. But if it does, I expect you to get hold of me and I'll try to do the best I can to help you out. Again, take a look at this case. This is fantastic. Now we're going to turn it around and take a look at the back of it. The back is in exceptional condition. The inputs and outputs have been cleaned thoroughly. Here is your, I'm not sure how well the camera will pick this up. I'll try my best. But this is your serial number on this unit. And the serial number is also written on the cabinet on the outside, and it's also written on the inside. Now, I do include 2 stickers. One is about the work that was done to the unit, and the other is the typical QA checklist I always include to make sure that you know it's gone through some testing. So again, this is the back of the unit. Of course, we'll take a look across the top. Again, quite frankly, it looks almost new. If I took this out of the box brand new, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and look for this on eBay.